example, in the book of Exodus, God redeems the Jews up out of Egypt, and in doing that, he conquered all the gods of Egypt, and so even Pharaoh. So I would say when a Muslim would take the most common and offensive one to say, I do not believe that a Muslim worships the true God, and the Muslim would say, I do not worship the true God.
Yeah.
So the question, so when we use, that's why, maybe too philosophical a little bit, but, so who is God? So what's your name, by the way?
Noah.
Noah, you're Noah, good name. Henry. So if I'm talking about Noah, so, I'm talking about a 6'4" black guy, and then like, oh, no, you'd be like, that's not me, you know what I mean? So when a Muslim talks about God, and I talk about God, the character that we're describing is two different things. You know what I mean? So you have this abstract term God, and people stuff it with different meanings. So that's why, as a Christian, I spend so much time talking about Jesus. I believe he's the one who reveals the character of God. So when it comes to other religions, I don't believe that they're worshiping the true God.
But if you as a Christian still believe that the other religions worship the true God, and the Muslim doesn't believe that you worship the true God, and the Jew doesn't believe that you worship the true God. Everybody doesn't worship the true God.
I agree. So the question, then it kind of comes back to which one's true. So I will say this: if Islam's true, I'm going to hell. Okay.
Yeah.
So if Islam's true, I'm going to hell. But it's maybe a longer discussion. But I would argue that if we sat down with the Quran and we sat down with the Bible, and like I'm going to try to be as simple as I can. But like if I was sitting out here, I say I'm a constitutionalist. You may not have ever met the United States Constitution, that's fine. But if I was saying I'm a constitutionalist, then I said no free speech, no right to bear arms, no due process, and things like that, you'd be like, this guy's not a constitutionalist, he's not. So Muhammad claims to be a prophet of God. And even in the Quran it says believe the Gospels and believe Moses. So the Old Testament and the New Testament says believe these things. Now, he, being a prophet, contradicts these things. So one of the ways I know he's not a prophet, I would know I'm not a constitutionalist, because I contradict the Constitution.
Yeah.
So when Muhammad contradicts the Old Testament and the New Testament, that's when I know he's not a prophet. So when he says, follow this God, I'm not going to listen to him because he's contradicted who he claims is in the Bible. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's not to put them down, it's not because I think I'm better than them, but the question is what's true. And so if we're asking that question, we're asking that question. But I will, I'll freely admit, if Islam's true, I'm going to hell.
And then, are the Ten Commandments, like the Jewish Ten Commandments, different from the Christian?
No. The Christianity would see Christ as the fulfillment of those things. So, like, I would say, as a Christian, I hold all the Old Testament, all 39 books. 39 books old.
Yeah.
39. Remember that?
Yeah.
39. Yeah. 27. Yeah. Right. So, and the Old Testament. Yeah. So I hold all the Old Testament being the Word of God and being true for me. So that would include the Ten Commandments. So I would agree with the Jew on the Ten Commandments. I'd agree with the Jew on Moses and stuff like that.
And about the pictures of God, isn't there like a section of the Ten Commandments that said that you shouldn't?
Yeah, we shouldn't have images of God in church.
Oh, so you should.
No,
You agree?
I agree that we should not have images of God in church. I generally attend a Presbyterian church, and we have a thing. We basically have a rule that says, like, we think it's in the commandments, but not to make any images of God.
Yeah.
So any image of the Father is wrong. But there are some who disagree, like with me, that saying because Jesus was God in the flesh, that you can have some of those images of God, but you can't make one of the Father. So there's a little bit of debate, but I do not conjure up any images of God when I'm worshiping Him. Nor would I paint one. So, are you Jewish or?
No.
Okay, all right.
Like half. Like my dad is.
Okay.
My mom.
Okay. Yeah. So that's So there would be a lot of agreement with the Jews, and so that's like. So I'm a Gentile. Like your mom. You said your mom's a Christian. So is she like German or European descent in some regard?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. So like my family's all European. So we were Gentiles. If you take Israel going back 2,000 years, they were looked at us and been like Gentiles. Like my ancestors worshipped stones and rocks and all sorts of stuff, and now we worship the true God. Through Jesus. So it's not a so it has nothing to do with being superior or anything like that. It just deals with so like if you're maybe not the easiest illustration, but yeah, like if you immigrated to the United States, became an American citizen, well, like you're an American now. And so as a Gentile, in a sense, in the Messiah, I've immigrated into Israel. So I am in a sense a Jew now. You know what I mean? Even though physically, genealogically, I'm not spiritually.
Interracial.
Yeah, in a racial sense, exactly. Spiritually, I would say I am a Jew because I worship the true God with Jews, you know what I mean? With true Jews all over. And so even in the Old Testament, you had people who were biologically Jewish, but they didn't really worship God, and so God judged them. And so that's kind of the rub that we have. And so our whole goal is to preach Jesus Christ. He's the Lord of everything, and we're to love Him and love our neighbors. So even if people worship other gods, we still love them. Are you from New York?
No, I was born in Philly, but live in Peru.
Do you really? Peru?
Yeah.
Are you guys globetrotters? Is that what's going on here?
I have another question.
Okay.
My dad's Anglican. What's the difference between his beliefs and yours?
I grew up an Anglican, so I would say, for the most part, to the untrained eye, very little. But where it's gonna be differences is usually in our church structure or in our church government. So an Anglican church is gonna be run by bishops. So you have like a bishop who come in, and you have fathers or priests who are gonna have a little more authority than our pastors and elders. So it's kind of like the difference between kind of like in a place where there's a bit more of a monarchy, like they don't have a pope, but they have a bit more of a monarchy in their authority structure, where ours is a little bit more, we have elders over us. So my church, if you came to my church, we'd have the pastor who preaches, but then you have the elders who make the decisions. Where if you're in an Anglican church, that priest makes all the decisions. And so it's usually just like a government thing, more so. So like if you take, let's just say New Zealand, theoretically, say New Zealand, the United States, kind of believes all the same laws, but within that, your governmental structure is different. That's where I would say the main. So it's not so much our theology about which is where the difference is, but it's how we govern ourselves is different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they believe in what they do.
Yeah, so it's just like even every state, the structure is kind of the same, but it'd be like, it's mainly like you go to Ohio, we have some different rules and laws that govern us, and then you go to California, we're all Americans, but we do some things differently. So I grew up an Anglican, and I'm not, just because they've gotten very, very liberal, where they would see my beliefs as being crazy. They'd be like, that guy's all this crazy stuff.
And how do you release so much in a book that was made like 2,000 years ago? By people that were starting to learn how to write.
Yeah, so I would say this, like, well, I'd encourage you to read it first of all, but within that, because I am operating from the idea that there is a God back in the universe, and that He has the ability to take Noah and speak through Noah. And so it's not predicated on your ability to be perfect, and so it's not that Noah's perfect, but just as even if you were to tell me to write something down, even though we're both erring, I could still get your message down. And so if God is to speak to some individuals, God can still get His message down. And so if you look at the 66 books being written, 39 books, 27 books, if you look at those books being written over about a 2,000-year period, I think it was 2,000, from about 1500 BC to, so basically a little shy of 2,000 years. And you have 42 different authors writing a book. So even when you speak, you have 42 different people talking about me, they're all going to say pretty different things. I mean, we'd all agree there was a guy out here preaching something like, oh, it's hateful, it's this, it's that. Others, oh, he's a really nice guy. So you have a bunch of different things. So if you have a bunch of different authors writing a book over 2,000 years, and I would argue to tell the same message, I think it ties in the idea that behind their message is inspiration, divine inspiration. And so, I could sit down, we can look at things where I believe it's there are historical reasons to believe the Gospels are valid, but even if not get too abstract, but even if I write a historically true book about your life, Noah's life, and every fact that there's true, it wouldn't mean that you're divine in origin, or even that my writing was. It just means that I wrote down a truthful book. So where does it come from? I would say it is rooted in the idea that I believe that God's backing it, and I would say, the 42 different authors over a 2,000-year period write the same message. A lot of that stuff is intertwined, but I would say it ultimately was a gift of God. I kind of I believe these things to be true, and I went from not believing it to believing it when I was 17 years old. So realize it's subjective, but it's kind of like to be honest with you, it is a little bit like a girl. Like if you see a girl, you're like, there's a girl when I was in college with this crush on. My buddy was like, her? I was like, yeah, I'm in love. I don't care who knows. And so there's a subjective element to it. You know what I mean? Like when you care about someone or you love someone, there is something subjective to it. And we like to think if we put all these rationality and all these facts, here's why, blah, blah, blah. But there's ultimately a subjective element to coming to the idea. It's like a light bulb. You're like, aha, that's true. So I admit there's a subjective element to all of it. And for a lot of Christians, it's pretty difficult to admit because we want to think, and I believe it's absolutely true. It's not to deny it's truthful. I'm just convinced that I know there's a subjective element that transitioned me from going from not believing to believing. No problem. Any other questions, comments, demands? So, are you guys just running around the city by yourselves? Yeah. Kind of. It's a great place, and this is a great.